Bro, imagine needing 5 URs to complete your deck. This message brought to you by Preda Gaming Gang. Alright, so right off the bat, if you just take a quick glance at this, and if you know just like anything about the PREDAPLANT engine, or if you've seen any of the builds that people in TCG used for this deck, you're probably wondering, where the hell is predapractice? This card's literally a bird call. It's freaking cracked, right? Yes, predapractice is cracked. Unfortunately, in Master Duel, you know, the best PREDAPLANT starter in the deck, well, I would argue would be the only quote-unquote good starter, is Ophrys Scorpia, and it's limited. So in order to make predapractice 1 live and 2 a consistent card, we gotta run a higher predaPLANT count, and just already like there's the quality of predaPLANT monsters is not that high. Like the only other one that even can, I guess, masquerade it, the 2 that can masquerade as starters are Follicula and Chlamydo Sundew, which both of them fuse. But you really need, in order for these to be starters, you also need to open multiple predaplants so you can go into Amulo Melodies, which is the actual way you get your play started. You'll see in the basic combos later how you get your plays going with the predaPLANT engine is usually Ophrys Scorpia summoning either Chlamydo Sundew or Darlingtonia Cobra from your deck, depending on the combo line, and then you'll either fuse into Ambula Melodies or add a fusion card to get your plays going. And then when you make Ambula Melodies, this card is literally cracked. I can't believe they printed a card like this. It's a Rhoda and a Lone Fire Blossom in one. Like, it's unbelievable. So even though this looks like a small predaPLANT engine, which it is, you go through every one of these during your combo lineup pretty much. Like you need this to fuse again. You send this with during your brand infusion to add this. You add your fusions, or your predaPRIME fusion with Ambula Melodies. This will get you your instant fusion or your brand infusion. It all flows together, and it's quite a different line of play from other Brand Despia builds. So, the next question is, if you're not really trying to draw too many predaPLANT monsters, what's the most common way you do get your play started? And the best way is always instant fusion. This card is, I can't believe like this card has not been banned yet in like any form. TCG, OCG, or Master Duel. Like, so basically this card in this deck itself is 5 interruptions without using a normal summon. And tier 2 limits ain't even out yet. So yeah, this is the best 1-card starter in the deck, and this is why we run Keeper of Dragon Magic as a 3-up, because this card basically just says discard a card, search instant fusion. The combo, as I mentioned, does not require a normal summon, so literally this is just 3 extra copies of instant fusion, which is insane. You know, so much for being limited, right? And next supplementary engine to talk about is the branded engine. So this is like Plan B. This is like it outputs a weaker combo than you would do if you open a way to instant fusion or the predaPLANT engine. Yeah, basically like 1 less interruption. But it's also like a fallback, you know, in case your plan A does get stopped. Because with brand fusion, if you just have Brand Fusion but you have a normal summon available, then you can do your PREDAPLANT line. But if you spend your normal summon, like say on a Keeper of Dragon Magic and it got negated, then you can still do the old Brand Fusion line by, you know, end on Mirror Jade, Brand in red, ad libitum as a fallback. That's why we run Tragedy and ad libitum, just as a still way to end on a respectable board after stopping our main, if our main combo line gets stopped. And Stay Sailor Romarian is the primary thing we'll dump with Brand Fusion. Spoilers, if you can see in the extra, we're primarily going for Albion. Rebellion is like an edge case where sometimes we draw a card like our biceps, so then we don't need the Center of Albion, we can discard this to trigger, but most of the time it's going to be Albion sends Star Sailor Romarian. When Romarian is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can dump a level 5 lower plant from a deck or extra deck, and usually we'll dump Biblis. Biblis will, when it's sent to the graveyard, you can add a PREDAPLANT monster to your hand. So either, depending on the combo line, you either add Bufalicula as an additional fusion, or you can even add Ophrys Scorpia as a way to start your combo if you haven't done a normal summon yet. And tying to that point, which is why we only run one Alibur, like we don't want to normal summon this, we don't want to see, we prefer seeing Keeper of Dragon Magic, because instant fusion, resolving instant fusion is much better than resolving Brand Fusion for us. Instant fusion will get our Brand Fusion anyways, and let us do our bunch of stuff beforehand. So Alibur is what we only want to get Alibur off of branded opening, so it doesn't conflict too much of our normal summons. So as for the searchable fusion spells, so we usually always want to end on Predator Prime Fusion. This is basically, most of the time what you're doing with this is you're gonna have something like a Dragostapelia and another dark monster on board, usually a Mirror Jade. So after you spent both, like your Mirror Jade and your Dragostapelia, you can use Predator Prime Fusion to put Mirror Jade in the grave and then make another Dragostapelia. And then that combos with Banishment, because then Banishment can then bring back the Mirror Jade, and you have a second Mirror Jade effect on the same turn. You don't even need to fuse anything off on your opponent. Like, they could just use this as a monster reborn for the Mirror Jade. But if, you know, in the matchups where this is live and against a dark deck, you know, like Despia, that's another interruption. This is the main thing you're gonna set off. If you access your PREDAPLANT plays at all, this is what you're gonna set off with Albion. Again, Branded Red is the plan B when you only access the Despia line. And by the way, this deck in particular has a very good matchup against Branded Despia. You're way better at Super Poly in their field than they would be at yours. And speaking of Super Poly, this is why one Super Poly? Why just one? Because one, it's searchable in multiple ways. So you can always access. You always have a way to access it as like just a bomb against Despia and just blow them out. And two, it's not actually good against other matchups. You know, we're not on a high Despia engine, so it's not like we are a high number of Despia monsters. So it's not like you can just fuse off random stuff like synchros or heavy attacks or high attacks at monsters and stuff with your Despia monsters to make those fusions. Most of your poly targets are mainly just gonna be dark. So there's a lot less decks where Super Poly is applicable against for the PREDAPLANT version. So you search this when you need it, but you don't really want to draw it outside of that. And another advantage, cycling back to the predapractice, so because we're on a lower predaplant count, we don't have to fit in room for 3 of these plus like, you know, double, triple the predaplant monsters in the main deck. So we have room for a lot of tech slots. So we can actually run quite a fair number of hand traps. You know, you could run. You hate runics, you know, run cosmics. And it's not like the deck consistency is hurt by not having the high number of predaplant cards, because if you count the starters, you know, you have 3 of these plus instant fusion plus foolish. We can get, by dumping these 2, you can access either half of your engine. You can run product prosperity fairly easily. Going first, you banish 6. Going second, you banish 3. All the triple branded fusion, the branded openings, you know, LABYRINTH by itself is still technically a combo, just not the predaplant combo, but this is like 12, 13 decent starters, which is fairly decent amount. It's a much higher actually starter number than the standard brand Despia deck, which only has like 8 to 10 ways to their brand of fusion. Oh, and one thing I'm sure people that play TC are asking, you know, where's Snow? Why not send Snow as a light target? And in a TCG where people in the higher density predaplant builds where they ran like 3 Biblips. I don't think that's how you pronounce it, but that's just the easiest way for me to pronounce it. They ran like triple of this. They could run 3 Ophrys Scorpia. They basically access the Bison search a lot more often, a lot easier than a build like this with a lower predaplant count. So they don't have to send Space Sailor that often. They can have a free send, so they can send Snow. Again, because we're on the lower predaplant engine, it's very rare we actually get to access this before Prime Fusion, so we're going to be sending this most of the time. So we're not going to include another brick that we just don't really have access to very much in the build. It's the one thing that I don't like it. Well, I wouldn't say I don't like it. I prefer like having a high amount of room for tech choices and a higher amount of good 1.5 card starters instead of 2 card starters. But the disadvantage of that is obviously we can't depend on sending Snow that often. So most of the extra deck is pretty standard. You know, double Drago Stapelia, starting Venom as a super poly target, double Mirror Jade. Again, this is a branded build that goes for Albion more often, so it's very necessary to run the triple Albion. We only need 1 Lubellion. This is when we make this for edge cases, when we have some weird cards in hand that Albion wouldn't be optimal with. Although you oftentimes you go Lubellion into Albion or vice versa. Guardian Chimera, be very careful. If you can fuse Guardian Chimera Chlamydal Sundew, but this needs to be fused with a spell a spell card in order to get its effect to pop. So don't make Chimera with Chlamydal Sundew. Make it with Bufalicula instead. And I forgot to mention for Bufalicula, it's a once per turn fusion, but it's because it's a pendulum, it stays on the field. So if they don't out this, you get a free fusion spell every turn. 1 Triff, Predaplant best deck. Obviously, Ambula Melodies. Titaniclad is the way to play around Nibiru, and it's a second send target off Albion, since quite often you'll be sending twice in the turn with Mirror Jade, so you don't want to send like 2 Albions. You know, there's no really point of that. So basically, Titaniclad, when you get nibbed, when you send Titaniclad in the end phase, you can get a Fallen Balbazal, then fuse with their nib token, and then you still got stuff from there. You still got a management set. and you could potentially even go for Brand in red in that case too, because that getting the Alabaster from that makes the Brand in red life. Millenniumize, you don't. This is an ultra. This is the most cuttable card in the deck. You don't really need this, especially since we're on a lower PREDAPLANT count again. So we're gonna start up plays with a way to instant fusion more often than not. So we're not actually. You really only make this if you can access your PREDAPLANT engine without using instant fusion, and then you can. It's very easy to sniff out when your opponent has Ash, you know, or they're holding an Ash. It's like they let a Keeper resolve, or they let a Brandon opening resolve, but then they still get a response window. You know, you can figure that they might have Ash, then you can, when you search instant fusion and you have a Brand fusion in hand already, you can just make this instead to play around it. But I mean, it's very marginal. It doesn't come up too often. And the coolest part is that you can protect this with Brand opening and then go on to and keep this into your opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. But that happens in less than 10% of your games. So you don't have to spend UR for this. You can add a second one of these potentially, or like other Albat or other Despia fusions. So for example, you can fit in double mask into this, make one mask on your turn, then Brand red the second mask on your opponent's turn, and that's a line of play you can do against certain control decks. But yeah, the second one of this is some edge cases where you don't need to send a Vibe Slips or Bib Slips, or if you open certain hands with Brand Fusion, you can, when you send Romarin can dump this so that when you make Mirror J, you can get to keep the Albion in the field by just banishing this and the Albaz Engrave, and then you get to keep, and then later on you get the fusion off the Albion, you know, stuff like that. Starting Venom Predator power, this actually doesn't come up too often because the only way this deck really puts counters on the opponents, or this version, is with Dragos Stapelia. So if you don't know what this card's, when it's an Omni negate and you can tribute cards with predator counters or predator counters on either side of the field to negate the effect. So you can you can tribute your opponent's cards to negate their own effects. But we're not running PREDAPLANTing as the search target off of, I'm just gonna call this Ambulance, because again, low PREDAPLANT. I say this so often, but like a low PREDAPLANT count, it's not. Oftentimes it isn't even live. Sometimes we just go through all the PREDAPLANTs in one combo, and then you can't even use this. And it's not like you can get follow up with this. The majority of time that you use this, like in any variant, is basically when you have a Dragos Stapelia up. You can flip this again, because Dragos Stapelia, its negate is not tied to its quick effect. Its negate is just tied to whatever has a predator counter. So you can flip this and put predator counters and more things. Then you have and that's like another form of negation. But like at that point, you can just do the same thing with Predaprime Fusion, where you just make another Dragos Stapelia. So you get the second negate anyways, and with Predaprime Fusion you get the benefit of putting the Mirror Jade Engrave, where you can revive with banishment, whereas this doesn't let you do that. So yeah, I prefer the Predaprime Fusion as the search target over PREDAPLANTing, and because we don't have the search target for PREDAPLANTing, it's not very often you get to tribute your opponent's cards with this to negate their own effects. But this is still pretty cool. Like, it has a floating effect too, which is really nice. And you don't need to, if you don't want to make a second Dragos Stapelia all the time, you know, it's pretty cool. I mean, this comes up less often than most of the other cards in the extra deck, but it's still nice to have. But it's also This is the only UR that you need from the new selection pack, and it's not necessary by any means anyways. You can play this deck with 0 new UR. If you have a branded engine already, you can basically build this deck for no URs, which is, I think, is pretty cool. And next, I'm still learning the deck, but there's three basic combos I think that are very important for this build, and most of the combos start out differently, but they end up flowing back to the same ending combo line. So yeah, stay tuned. Alright, so this combo is if you open the Dream and you open the limited one of Ophrys Scorpia. So you're gonna Ophrys Scorpia, pitch a monster, and you're gonna get out the Chlamydos Sundew. Not the Darlington Cobra. Very important. Next, Chlamydos Sundew will fuse itself and the Ophrys Scorpia into Ambulance, which will trigger to add our Predapractice fusion. Next, it'll tribute itself, and this is where we'll get the Cobra. And Cobra will add us our branded fusion. Now, because I'll just show this. Now, if we didn't have branded fusion, this is where we would add branded fusion. But since we have branded fusion in hand, we can actually do something and add instant fusion. This is where if people are good and they hold their ash for your branded fusion, you can get out Millenniumize first, just as a free layer of protection, and then you can fire off your branded fusion, which we always go for Albion unless we open like the buy thing, the buy Predaplant in hand. So we'll dump Albaz and Romarin for Albion. Then we'll trigger Albion and Romarin. And Romarin will dump our Biblips, make Mirror Jade with Albaz and the Ambulance. And Biblips is gonna trigger, which will add us our Bufo these nuts. Activate Bufo. And then you can tribute, well, you fusion summon Dragosepelia with the Albion, and either of these two monsters. Since we didn't have brand opening, we'll just trigger up, sack out the Millenniumize. It's gonna die anyways, and we'll set our Predator fusion. We open Banishment too, which is nice, since now in the end phase we trigger Albion, which we can also use to set Brandon in red. And since we opened Albaz, it's also, funnily enough, it's also live. Usually that doesn't happen, but basically, what you have is Dragosepelia, Mirror Jade, Predaprime fusion, and Banishment, which is like 4 or 5 interruptions by itself. And what you usually do is, waiting for them to do something. Right, so you can trigger Mirror Jade first, send Albion. Then you can also use your Dragosepelia. There's 2 interruptions there. And after you use these two, you could activate Predaprime Fusion to fuse off your spent Mirror Jade and Dragostapelia into another Dragostapelia. So now you have your third interruption. Starry Nights are the Predaplant counter apparently. And then after you summon your second Dragostapelia off Predaprime Fusion, you can then activate your banishment that you set to revive the Mirror Jade. And if they had something we could fuse off that's not a Starry Night Starry Dragon, you could make something out of it, such as a Starting Venom or a Triff. But since they don't have anything we can fuse, you know, you wouldn't use it, but this is just to show that you can have another interruption if they're playing a dark deck. But yeah, the Mirror Jade is back now, so now we get a fifth interruption with Mirror Jade, where we can send Titanic Clan now since we already sent Albion this turn. So that setup is essentially up to 2 Dragostapelia effects and 2 Mirror Jade effects and a banishment. And in the end phase we get to trigger Albion again. Okay, so this combo is going to show why we run Keyblade Dragon Magic and why it's actually probably one of the best starters in the deck. And the reason for that is, when you use it to discard a card, we get to add instant fusion to our hand. And instant fusion is the best combo starter in the deck, since you can instant fusion and immediately go for your Amblumo Amblu Melodies, and that will get us our Predaprime Fusion, and then Amblu can tribute itself to get our Darlington Cobra. Darlington Cobra can add us a fusion spell. It would add us Branded Fusion, but we already had it, so then we can use Branded Fusion to dump our Romarin and Fallen Valdaz. Then we trigger Albion and Romarin again. And Romarin will dump our Bibslisp. Albion will make our Mirror Jade using the ambulance Predaplant we just dumped. And Bibslisp will trigger, which will add us our Bufollicula. Scale Bufollicula. And we can make Dragostapelia with Albion and the Keyblade Dragon Magic. Since if Keyblade Dragon Magic combos, you tend to have an extra body on field, so I like to leave Darlington Cobra on field, which makes our Predaprime Fusion live more, since this requires us to have a Predaplant monster on the field, so it just gives us, it's less likely that some random board wipe will make this card dead. Then we can set our Predaprime and whatever else we have. And end phase, Albion can get us our banishment. Now, if you notice in this hand, there's actually even more stuff we could do. I didn't show it because this is just a basic combo to show what Keyblade Dragon Magic can do, but you could since we already opened Branded Fusion and Branded Opening, you could go for a line where you use Branded Opening to get Alibur, and then use your Instant Fusion to make Millennium Eyes Restrict to protect your plays, and then at the end phase, Branded Opening will also protect your Millennium Eyes, so you get to keep on your opponent's field. This is pretty nice as well. Okay, so the deck's strongest combos are the ones where you start with your Predaplant or Instant Fusion or the Chiquita Dragon Magics. All those combo lines are fairly similar. They're basically all of them play out like the first two I just showed you. There's another way to get into your Predaplant plays, and that's with just Branded Fusion itself, although it is slightly weaker, and you don't have to commit to Predaplant plays. If you just have Branded Fusion, you can just do the normal Despia line, since we do run that as a fallback in case our Predaplant plays get stopped. But if you do want to access your Predaplant plays, even with Branded Fusion, you just need Branded Fusion and a monster. So we'll just access our Alibur for a Branded Fusion. Right. Now Branded Fusion. Once again, dumping Romarin and Albaz. Unfortunately, we have to banish Albion, so that's one less. And it's one less interruption we'll have in the end phase. But we still get the Romarin. Dump Biblips. Some Mirror Jade. Now Biblips will add us our Ophrys Scorpia. Now we'll normal the Ophrys Scorpia and pitch any monster. This time, instead of getting Chlamydyl Sundew like we did with we opened with this, we have to get our Dartington Cobra, which will then add us our Instant Fusion. Now we'll Instant Fusion to get our... This is exhausting trying to read this every time you make it. This will add us... This would normally add us our Predator Prime Fusion. Since we already have it though, we can just add whatever. Next, Ablumine. Very important. Tribute either... Do not tribute itself this time, there's no point since we already went through Albion this turn. Tribute Ophrys Scorpia or Dartington Cobra to get out our Chlamydyl Sundew. And now Chlamydyl Sundew will fuse with itself and the Amblumo Melodies. Since it is a fusion monster, we can make Dragos Apelli with it. Now we get to set our Predator Prime Fusion. And if we really wanted to, you could set the banishment by using Mirror Jade to send the Albion to banish our Dartington Cobra. Then end phase, we can get the Albion to set our banishment. So if you want to use Branded Fusion to do your Predaplant lines, you get Dragos Apellia and then either a Mirror Jade or a Banishment and then the Predator Prime Fusion. So it's one less interruption, but it's still pretty decent. I would say, you know, it still rivals that of a Brandon Despia good hand pretty well. So yeah, I really enjoy playing this deck. It's it's a cool way that even though you see you're using similar extra deck cards, similar boss monsters to the standard Brenner Despia builds, it plays so differently. And I'm still learning the ropes, so like there's so many plays that I see that I don't even consider, like unbricking yourself when you draw this. You don't need to run 2 of these. You can play around it. Like it's like there's so many interesting lines of play with this, and it ruins and it kills the Brand Despia matchup as well. So you know it's always fun to beat out the top deck.